Now it is already starting to get colder here in Minnesota, and I got home after vacation this weekend and I put on my coziest socks, and I have this lovely cozy blanket that I have put over my lap, and I just thought it would be fun to do a cozy book haul. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. So I'm going to go through, I've got a couple really beautiful special editions to show you guys. I have some review copies that I have received, and I have a nice little stack of books that I've collected over the last month and a half, and I'm really excited to show you guys what I have picked up. I want to start with the review copies. This month I received 2 review copies from author Andy Peliquin, who is a grimdark author, writes a lot of kind of assassin fantasy, which is very exciting. At least those are the 2 series that I'm most aware of his. He's also a great member of the indie fantasy community and just an all-around cool guy. He was kind enough to send me book 1 of his Dark Blade Assassin series, which honestly I had no idea it was this much of a chunk when I put it on my TBR, and that just makes me even more excited because I have been in the mood for some assassin fantasy lately, and I had mentioned on Twitter that this was a book that I've been really wanting to get to, and I had the ebook version of it, but Andy was nice enough to send me the physical copy. It is a beautiful cover. Look at this cover. I'm so excited. I am so ready for some jaded assassin story. I can't even tell you guys, and I'm really looking forward to getting into this. And he surprised me by including Child of the Night Guild, which is book 1 of his Queen of Thieves series, which is another assassin fantasy, but this time it follows, I believe, a young woman who grows up in kind of a thieves and assassins guild. And once again, I'm here for some assassin fantasy content right now, and having both of these as options. This one's a little bit shorter, but I have the option of a couple different feel of protagonists, which is really exciting. And Andy, thank you so much for sending these my way. I'm really looking forward to getting my first taste of your work. I'm really excited to show you guys this because I do have a pretty good variety in this stack when it comes to genre, which I'm very excited about. So I went to a little hole-in-the-wall bookstore with a friend of mine when we got together very early on. I think it was like early to mid-September. And I picked up Zane Grey's Under the Tonto Rim. There were 2 books that my grandfather always talked about with Zane Grey, who was one of his favorite authors growing up. And one of them was Riders of the Purple Sage, which you saw on probably either my last or 2 book hauls ago, and then Under the Tonto Rim. And this was sitting on their Westerns shelf for 50 cents or something ridiculous like that. And I've been wanting to read both of his favorite Zane Grey books in the near future, so now I have both of them, and it's really cool to get these old yellowed page. This book has been around, it has seen some things, and it's just kind of a cool way to tap back into that past history. The other thing I'm going to show you guys that I got at the secondhand store, I debated whether or not I was even going to include this in my book haul because y'all are going to make fun of me, and I don't care because this is a nerd culture thing that I just am so freaking excited about. You guys are gonna laugh at me, it's fine. So one of my gateways into fantasy was when I was very young. Growing up, I used to watch Yu-Gi-Oh! On the WB network, and I absolutely loved it. It was one of the first shows that I watched outside of Narnia where fantasy was very heavily explored. And we were in this shop, and I found, for a very ridiculously low price, the Dueling Legends official handbook from Yu-Gi-Oh! And I opened this book, and it was like the biggest blast from the past I had ever seen. It has all of the characters in here with their, main monsters that they duel with, and it is just a Yu-Gi-Oh! Nerds. I had a moment with this, okay? So we have the Yu-Gi-Oh! Dueling Legends official handbook now, which is very cool, and it even has the poster inside still, so that was pretty awesome. Anyways, moving on to the books. Now, if you saw my video that I did recently about bookstore versus booktube experience, I talked about going to Barnes & Noble without my phone and having a really cool kind of revelation while I was there about unplugging and really having a different bookstore experience than I've had recently. And I picked up 2 books while I was there that I'm really excited about. One of them is a very small sci-fi novella called The Scourge Between Stars by Ness Brown. So this book has to do with a young spaceship captain who's responsible for a small group of people, and it's the last of the people from a failed colony, and they're slowly coming back to Earth. And I don't know if Earth is just a complete uninhabitable disaster at this point, but I kind of liked the idea of it being a failed colony and then them coming back to Earth, because so many of the sci-fi books that I see, they're leaving Earth. So I thought this sounded like fun, and it's very short, and honestly I just liked the cover, so that was one of the ones that I picked up. The second one that I got was from the world history section, and I have done quite a bit, I shouldn't say quite a bit, I have done some reading about memoirs from people that were North. So the other place that I went in Barnes & Noble was the world history section, and I really have enjoyed reading some memoirs of North Korean defectors and just information about Korea in general, North and South. And I'm a big fan of a lot of Korean arts culture in terms of writing and music and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just really fascinated by these stories of people that have lived in North Korea. And I found Without You, There Is No Us, Undercover Among the Sons of North Korea's Elite by Suki Kim. So this is a young woman, I believe, who was a teacher and at a university, and she went undercover in one of the elite or noble groups of North Korea. And I am really looking forward to this because it's from an era of North Korean modern history that I am a little bit less familiar with. When Kim Jong-il passed away and that transfer of power then to his son, and how that was kind of an upheaval for the country. I just think that this is going to be a really fascinating and sobering addition to the North Korean memoirs that I have read already, and it just sounded really interesting, so I'm looking forward to getting to this one. Next up, I purchased a book, We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies by Tserang Yangsum Lama. I hope I was pronouncing that correctly. And this is another era of history that I don't know a lot about, but I'm very interested in learning more, and that is a Chinese invasion into the country of Tibet, and we follow 2 sisters who are refugees, and they get split up, and one of them, I believe, is living with her sister's daughter in a city, but the sister that was the mom has disappeared or something of that nature, and it's them kind of trying to form some kind of a life and deal with the things that they've been through. And from what I understand and what I'm expecting is that we're going to be getting kind of different ways of coping with the situation that they've come out of, and I just think that this is going to be an incredibly important and sobering read, and I'm really looking forward to it. Next up, we're going to take a swerve back into the fantasy genre because I have picked up a few more classic style fantasy books recently that I'd love to read. Patricia McKillip is an author that I have never read, and I have heard this book thrown around in conversation a few times, and I'm just curious. That is The Forgotten Beasts of Eld by Patricia McKillip. So this story, from what I understand, is about a young woman who is a solitary person, and she is some kind of a magical, wizard, some kind of magic user, and she has collected this little kind of menagerie of magical creatures around her. She is perfectly happy with her solitude until it is shattered one day by a young soldier who comes into her space holding a baby, and the story goes from there. So again, this one sounded kind of fun and something a little bit different from what I typically pick up, and I've been wanting to read some of my predecessors in the fantasy genre, and I'm really excited to add this to that pile. Next, I picked up 2 novellas from a couple of writer friends of mine. The first one is Ruins of Smoke, the prequel novella to Seeds of War by João F. Silva. I have not read Seeds of War yet, but I am pretty sure I'm gonna love it based on everything I've been hearing. And this prequel can be read either before Seeds of War or after it. It doesn't seem to matter which order you read them in, so I thought it would be fun. I always love getting a little taste test of an author's work before going into their main book. And so I picked up The Ruins of Smoke after it just recently came out, and I had heard such amazing feedback about it that I knew I wanted to try this before I move into Seeds of War. The second novella that I picked up in that little shopping spree was A Prelude to Ashes by my good friend Thiago Abdallah, who is the author of the Ashes of Averin series, starting with A Touch of Light. This is a book that I should have owned a long time ago, to be honest. I have read both A Touch of Light and A Shade of Madness, which is the sequel, and I still hadn't read Prelude to Ashes yet, so now I have no excuse. I have the physical copy of it, and I'm really excited to see how Thiago dives back into a storyline that we are introduced to in the beginning of A Touch of Light, so I'm looking forward to checking it out. Next up, and this was kind of an impulse buy, but I'm really excited about it actually. It's such a massive swerve from my typical books. I one day decided that I was going to do a search on the internet about what the most popular BookTok books were these days, because there's so many videos about booktube versus BookTok, and BookTok is ruining the internet and ruining reading, and so many people are so mad at BookTok. So I thought that I would just look at a list of some of the books that are really popular on BookTok right now and read one just out of curiosity. It's not something that I intend to really dive into heavily, but I wanted to try at least one. The book that kept showing up on the top of all of these lists was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Now, I expected, from everything I know and my kind of just already prejudiced opinion of BookTok books, that this was probably going to be kind of a tongue-in-cheek gag read. And I've been told by a couple of my friends that maybe I should actually give it a chance, because there are perhaps some things in this book that I might find actually really good. And so I'm looking forward to that. I really have no idea what to expect. I didn't even read the back blurb, so we'll see if I enjoy it. I plan on vlogging it or at least doing a video on it, and it should be a good time. My dear friend, Andrew's Wizardly Reads, once again pulled the string to my wallet and sent me a message about a book that I desperately needed to read because I was going to love it because there were assassins in it and he was really loving reading it. And that is R.J. Barker's Age of Assassins. Now, I really didn't know anything about this before he reached out to me and told me to check it out. But again, like I mentioned before, I am in the mood for some assassin fantasy right now, and I have lots of options now. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm excited. Andrew really, really enjoyed it. The tagline is, "To catch an assassin, use an assassin." I'm in, at this point it's not going to take me much to get into some decently written assassin fantasy, so I'm looking forward to it. Next up, I purchased Michael Roberti's The Traitors We Are. This is another book that is a Spiffbo competitor right now, the self-published fantasy blog off, and it has been getting some amazing feedback. And one of the things that I really think is cool about this world building that Michael has done is that in this world, when you die, anything you have written on, the writing disappears, which is such a freaking cool concept to begin with that I really didn't need anything else to pick this book up. I'm really excited to read this. I can't wait. And I was able, because I ordered it from Silverstone's Books, to get a signed copy. I also ordered, speaking of novellas, the prequel novella called The Revenge of the Thousands. So I have both of those two to get to, and I'm really looking forward to these. I have heard amazing things, especially about The Traitors We Are, so that will be also a fun read. The other book that I purchased from Silverstone's Books was Soul Stealer Origins by Reed Logan Westgate. This is another participant in the self-published fantasy blog off this year, and This one wasn't on my radar at first, and then I had a couple of friends who mentioned it to me and said, you know, Tori, this might be a book you want to check out. This one I think is going to have some more classic fantasy vibes. I might be totally wrong about that, but we have a holy crusade where there's a Knights Templar and they are going after a weapon, and there's a magic user that is unearthed. And the more that I've been hearing about this and the more I've been hearing people talk about it, the more I'm starting to realize that it's something that I'm really excited to read. And so I can't wait. This was another one that I was able to get signed because I purchased it from Silverstone's Books, and there was a really cool metal bookmark that came in with it. I'm excited to read this one as well. And I just gotta say, to all of the indie authors out here, I'm just so incredibly impressed with the uniqueness and the concepts you guys are coming out with, and there's just so many amazing indie fantasy books right now that I can't keep up. So for those of you who were around for my top 10 books of 2022, know that I read The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton last year. It's one of my favorite films of all time, and the book did not disappoint. It was a 5-star read for me last year. It was in my top 10 reads of the year. I absolutely loved it. It's an incredible book. It deserves every accolade it's ever received and more. And I had read recently That Was Then, This Is Now, which is also a book by S.E. Hinton, which I didn't like as much as The Outsiders, but it was still a really good S.E. Hinton vibes book. Then I looked into her canon of work and realized that she has, I knew of a couple of other books of hers, to be fair, but only a couple of them. So I purchased Rumblefish by S.E. Hinton. As you can see, again, these are not long books. I got Tex by S.E. Hinton, and then one that I hadn't heard before, and that was Hawks Harbor by S.E. Hinton. So what I'd like to do is read these, and there's one or two other ones that I wasn't able to get my hands on yet of hers. I would like to read all of her novels and kind of do a video about them and rank them, and I'm really excited to read more of her work. I love her just raw, honest simplicity of her storytelling, and it is so incredibly powerful in such a short space of pages. She always gives you an absolute gut punch of characterization, and I'm really looking forward to diving into the rest of her body of work. Next up is the book I am currently reading, and that is Jade War by Fonda Lee. I've been slowly collecting the trilogy. I finally got book 2 because I'm doing the read-along of the Greenbone trilogy on my channel from September through November, and right now we are on Jade War, and I've already started it, and let me tell you, I'm already loving this trilogy. I'm really excited to see what Fonda Lee does with this. The mafia, gangster, Asian influence, character-focused goodness of this trilogy so far. I am so excited to have this under my belt, and I would not be surprised if it keeps going the way it is, that this book will end up in my top 10 fantasy series lists. Now, the next one is a little bit influenced by my friend Andrew again, but I've been kind of percolating on this for a while. I've been wanting to read Agatha Christie for a while, and then Andrew kind of had an Agatha Christie kick. I shouldn't say had, he's still on it. But I decided that I wanted to grab a couple of Agatha Christie books, and I really didn't know where to start. I have Murder on the Orient Express, which is one of her more well-known ones, but then I caught sight of A Haunting in Venice, which I had never heard of before, and it just sounded really interesting because we have a young person who claims to have seen a murder at a Halloween party, and it just kind of gives those thriller vibes that I was sort of looking for in this last couple of months, and again, it's not super long. So that would be my first Agatha Christie experience, and I'm just really excited about it because murder, mystery, and thriller are something that I've been wanting to try for a little bit now, because that's not a genre that I've delved into too much. So we're gonna try a little bit of Agatha Christie and see what we think. Next up was a replacement copy. I loaned my copy of The Lost Boy by Christina Henry to someone a long time ago. I cannot remember who, because I've been shoving this book at everyone since I read it a couple years ago. and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I wanted to get another copy of this. The US cover of this is awful and I hate it. And so I wanted to make sure that I got the non-US cover version, because look at that. That is so much better. It's so much better. This is a dark, spooky retelling of Peter Pan, which paints Captain Hook as a young boy as the protagonist and reveals more of a dark side to Peter Pan. And it is equal parts incredible survivor boyhood coming of age story alongside some really edge of your seat horror elements, and it's just phenomenal. I recommend this book to people all of the time, and I finally have this beautiful copy once again. Speaking of thrillers and murder mysteries, another book that caught my eye a while ago on somebody on YouTube's recommendations video. I can't even remember. It wasn't even a channel that I think I subscribed to. I was just watching some random things. And that is The Silent Patient by Alex mckillip, I think. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Apologies. But this one is a woman who was accused of murdering her husband, and she did the deed and hasn't spoken a word for years and years and years and years after that. She's obviously been arrested and held behind bars, but nobody can get her to talk about what happened. Nobody has a clue what actually happened that night. Nobody has any clue as to her motive. And a psychotherapist goes in to talk to her and see if he can finally get her to reveal what went on. So I've been hearing a lot of good feedback about this book. I'm curious. The premise sounds interesting. I like that there's kind of that psychotherapy aspect to it. So we will see how this book goes. The last book that I purchased this month that isn't a special edition was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Again, a shorter sci-fi novel, and this one apparently is the inspiration novel for the Blade Runner franchise, which I don't honestly know that much about, but I know enough about it to know that I want to check it out a little bit more and read the story that inspired it. And it sounded really interesting, especially now in a time where there's a lot of discussion about AI. It's just, I think, very pertinent now, and the idea that people could purchase AI anything, whether it's a human or an animal or anything, and what culture and society would look like with that, just fascinates me, and I'm really looking forward to checking this out. Now let's talk about the special editions. So the third book that I purchased when I was at Barnes & Noble for my bookstore versus booktube experience was this beautiful special edition of one of my favorite books of all time, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. It's this absolutely stunning red, has a plastic cover. So you can see it's got beautiful illustration on the back, and the edges are, let's see, move my face. The edges are spray painted. They're really beautiful, have all of these symbols on them, and there are so many illustrations on the inside. We have black end papers. So as you can see, the book is absolutely filled with these beautiful full page illustrations. And I couldn't resist. I couldn't say no. I have about 4 versions of this book now. The last book on this list, and by far the most incredibly beautiful book I think I have ever seen, is I backed the Wraithmarked Creative Kickstarter for the special edition of The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Long, which is widely regarded as one of the best indie fantasy books that has been written by a lot of people, and I haven't read it yet, but that did not stop me from backing the Kickstarter because I have every intention of loving this book. Pictures and video just do not do this beautiful edition any justice. The silver foiling all over the cover, the silver foiling on the edges of the pages, the back with these beautiful illustrations by Felix Ortiz. Just gorgeous. You also received a foil bookmark that was signed by the author with art of the characters, and the naked hardcover is just stunning. This is by far the most beautiful book I own, if not at least in the top couple. These end paper illustrations of the characters are stunning. The back has this beautiful world map in full color. There's a black ribbon. All of the pages even have kind of an older grayed out texture to them. First pages of the chapters look like this. I mean, this book, they outdid themselves. This could not have been more beautiful, and I am so excited to read this story because from what I've heard, it deserves this kind of treatment, and I'm very excited to experience that. That is all the books that I have for this month in the book haul. I'm really excited about a lot of these. You'll probably notice that most of the books that I got this month are a little bit shorter, and that's because I've been feeling shorter books lately, and I have definitely committed to some chunks, as you'll see with Greenbone Saga and some of the other books that I'm reading this next couple of months, but I've really been looking forward to settling in with some shorter reads and not having to always commit to those giant chunky books, which I love very dearly, but sometimes you need to switch it up a little. So I would love to know down in the comments below if you have read any of these books, what you thought of them, which ones you think I'm going to absolutely love. Are there any that you think I won't jive with? I want to know all of the things, and I would also love to know if there are any cool books that you've purchased here in the last couple of weeks that you're excited to share. So I hope you guys are having a fantastic week. I hope you're reading 5-star reads, and I will see you in the next video.